Welcome back to Woodworking with Wes. Today we're going to build this really cool little stool. I'm going to show you how to go through, do all the work. I'm going to even talk about the materials that we've selected and how we get this really cool decorative little corner. So let's grab your tools and get started. I've got started a little bit because I wanted to show you this before we actually make one. We're going to be building 4 sides like this. One side is 2 inches wide, one side is 1.25 inches wide, and we're going to show you how that goes together to make 2-inch corners. And it's all done with 10-degree angles. This is 10 degrees. These angles in here are 10 degrees. A little bit later, we're going to be cutting the top and bottom off at 10 degrees. So remember 10-degree angles, and you can build this. We got started by milling some black walnut down to 3/4 inch material and cutting our pieces to the size we want. Here's one leg, here's the other leg, here's our little piece up at the top, here's our another piece down here. And so let's go ahead and put a leg together and show you how it comes together. We'll start off by drilling some pocket holes. We still have the pocket holes to drill in our bottom stretcher, so let's go ahead and show you about drilling some pocket holes. I have a little Kreg jig here that clamps to my board. We just take a clamp and we decide what's going to be front and back. I like that front. Okay, this is the back. We take our little Kreg jig and we put it on top of there. I clamp mine down to the bench so that it holds really good for me while I use the drill bit that Kreg has sent along with their piece, with their kit. We'll provide you a link to the Kreg Boring Jig kit that I bought. It's so handy, and you can see how you can drill your little holes, your pocket holes. Let's go the other 2 on the other side. Same way, clamp it down to my bench. There's our pocket holes on our bottom stretcher. There's our pocket holes on our top stretcher. Let's get some of the sawdust out of the way there. Okay, now one of the things that I always like to do when I put a face frame together or anything like that that's pocket holes, I always dry assemble it face up so that I can see how it goes together. And that also tells me where my rights and lefts and everything else has got to go so that I make sure I get everything where it's supposed to be. And I need to have another one that looks exactly like this. And so you can see how that's exactly the way it's got to be. And then you just turn it over. This piece will go down here. This piece comes up here. And I always start at the top and work my way down. On almost any face frame I do, we'll glue, clamp. We'll change our drill bit out to our driver. And then we'll use our pocket screws that are specially made for pocket holes, and we'll screw this together. Now I want to show you a little trick about where to position our bottom stretcher. If we take a look at the one that we already have assembled, I'm going to put it right here, put a board across the bottom, and we measure up, and we see that 6 7/8 is the distance from the bottom of our leg to the bottom of our stretcher, 6 7/8. We want to have that be the same on our new piece, 6 7/8. Our same board at the bottom, 6 7/8. Our board that we're using is 5, so 11 7/8. If we make a little mark right here at 11 7/8, come over here, and by having this board here, we don't have to try to worry about measuring this way. We can measure straight. 11 7/8 again, right there. And now we know where our bottom stretcher goes. It goes right here on our 11 7/8 marks. That makes it nice and easy to measure a kind of an angly piece that you can't get a real easy measurement on. Now we know exactly how to do that. Again, our clamp and our glue. We want to be a little closer to the edge for my clamp to fit up there good. Tighten it down really good and solid so it doesn't move around on us. Again, our face frame screws and our long driver. Okay, we'll go ahead and complete that other side, then I'll come back and I'll show you a couple of things that we've got to do next before we put it together. After I completed the assembly of our piece, I sanded the inside, the back side where the screws are, 120 and then 150. That's a the final sand that I'm going to do. The reason I did that beforehand is I'm not going to be able to sand on the inside afterward. Now I want to show you how this is going to go together. This side goes like this. Here's another side that goes like this, and you can see as you put these together, you can see how my 2-inch piece and now my 1 1/4 inch and the thickness of my frame make a 2-inch by 2-inch corner. I'm just holding this here. But before we can do that, and we're going to screw this together, clamp it and screw it together with glue. And before I do that, my tops are not cut and my bottoms are not cut at a 10-degree angle, and they need to be. So let's go over to this table saw, and I'm set up over there. I'm going to show you how we're going to accomplish that. We have put our miter gauge in and set it at 10 degrees. We have tilted our blade also at 10 degrees. By putting everything at 10 degrees, we now have lined up the top of our little frame so that it's square to the blade on the top. And so we're going to take an outside cut. This is the outside of our leg. We're going to take an outside cut at 10 degrees. Our legs are 23.5 inches tall. We're going to set our fence at that 23.5. We're going to move our miter gauge over, and then we're going to cut the bottoms of our legs off at that same 10 degree. Now it'll be an inside cut. So we have an outside cut and an inside cut, and that will give us the bevel on our legs that we want. So let's go ahead. We'll make all our top cuts at first, and then we'll set our fence and make all our bottom cuts, and that way all our pieces will be exactly the same. We've got to mark us a little place here. We put our little piece of blue tape there. Now we'll put our outside leg. We're going to call this a leg. We're going to stop calling it a frame, and we're going to call it a leg because that's what it is. It's one of the legs to our little stool. Now we'll put a pencil line on our blue tape, and now when we go to cut our tops, we'll just line those up with our blue tape like that. I'll turn on my saw. There is our 10-degree top cut. And like I say, we're going to go ahead and cut all the tops now, and then we're going to set our fence over here. So let's bring all of our leg over here. Okay, with our top angle cut, we've set our saw fence at 23 1/8. Remember, we were 23.5 total distance, but because we're cutting an angle, it makes it a little shorter. And we go ahead and we get our piece all set right where it needs to be. Get it held down, turn our saw on. And now with our angle cut top and bottom, it has a natural stand. When it stands flat on the surface, it already shows us our 10-degree angle. We'll go ahead and finish our cutting, and then we'll show you how we put them together. Our angles cut, now the top and bottom of our legs are going to be flush as we screw them together. But to screw them together, we got to have some holes drilled. I made a little jig that marks this. This has a 3/8 lip on this little jig, and by setting it, let me turn it around here so you can see it, because I've already marked the line. By setting our jig on the face of our leg, we mark the center of our board. By putting it here, we just run our pencil down here, and we've marked a line exactly 3/8 of an inch. Now, there's a little thing we're going to do here. We'll turn our jig around and put it against the side, and we'll mark another 3/8 line down the face of our leg. I've already drilled one so you can see what we're doing here. And we're going to put it together now with our leg. So let's see how this looks. Put our pencil down now so we can hold our leg again. We'll put our legs get our legs lined up. We're going to use these holes to screw our leg together, and then we're going to put some maple plugs in there. And so we're going to have dark wood, and so black walnut, white maple plugs, and we drilled these holes, decorative holes, so that when we get our corner put together, we have a line of decorative plugs down one side and a line of plugs on the other side, and it will give us a little pattern on the outside of our leg that's going to make our dark walnut and our white pegs really show up a nice little pattern. Now we're going to go ahead and mark all of our 2-inch sides and drill all of our holes, and then we're ready to start putting our legs together. With our center lines all marked, now we have to mark where we're going to drill our holes, and the way we're going to do that, now I measured these all out and had them all spaced correctly, but we want them to match. And your pattern of spacing is basically what I did is I measured in from the top and the bottom equal distance and divided the rest of it into equal parts. So it's not a hard thing to figure that out. You can do that if you're doing this stool like this. You can have your own drill pattern however you would like to have it. By putting our little spacer that we did, turning it around, we can hold, I'm going to put it around here so you can see it better. We can hold the tops of our angle pieces parallel. We don't want it to be like this where it's smooth across here, because then that moves our line down. But by putting this and putting it both up against it, now our pieces are lined up so they would be the same. Then we just take our pencil and we go back, and this is just done freehand, and we just mark our holes on our line, and now we have a spot. This is our drill bit that we'll be using. We'll be going to be using a countersink drill bit, and now we'll be able to use that mark that we have there to line up our holes with our countersink. We do the same thing for our holes on the side. We'll take our piece of wood that we used just a minute ago to make sure that they're even, put them side by side, and just go down and mark where we're going to drill. And that way we end up with all four legs drilled exactly the same, so that when we drill, our patterns are the same, and when we put our plugs in, our patterns are the same on every leg. So now we're all marked and we can drill. We're getting ready now to drill. We'll have two different sizes of the countersink. This one is the one we're going to use to drill our hole clear through where we'll put our screw. We'll take this one out and put this one in, and we'll drill our decorative hole here, because it won't go all the way through. It'll just go deep enough to give us a countersink that we can line up with our marks and put our plugs in. So we start off by drilling this hole here, and we've got to have something we can prop up so we don't drill into my table. All right, we've got a little mark there. Now we just make sure that we line up with our little mark, get started. Drill down, and we want to be deep enough to be able to put our screw in and still have room on top of our screw for our maple plug. So it has to be a fairly deep hole, and you're going to have to get used to how deep you're drilling. Having drilled hundreds of holes myself, I kind of know what I'm doing, and you might have to practice a little bit before you get to the point where you're just exactly where you want to be, and there's nothing wrong with practice when it comes to woodwork. Let's go ahead and finish our drilling and get ready to put our stool leg. As you can see, we now have our countersink holes all drilled. The ones at the edges are decorative. The ones on the face side go all the way through. So let's go ahead and put two sides together, show you how that works. We have our glue clamps ready. We're going to be using 1 1/4 grabbers. So these little screws right here, put them together. We're going to make a corner that looks like this. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to put some glue on the edge, and then be very careful as we clamp up. We don't want to get a whole bunch of glue on the inside where we've already sanded, but we want to have a good glue joint along with our screws. This stool has to hold me up, so we don't want that falling down. Okay, start off by getting one clamp on there, and then we can adjust it to hold it in place where we need to. By having our legs cut at our 10-degree top and bottom, we know where we have to line up in order to make our corners look good and square. The nice part about it, all these 10-degree angles and everything that we're cutting, the base of our stool come together, but our corners, when we put our corners together, they're all just 90 degrees. So we just use our 90-degree that we cut on our table saw, and it's just a table saw cut. Very easy to put these little corners together because there's no special angle on the actual joint itself. Okay, you can see how come together. We want to make sure that glasses on here, we're nice and flush with all of our stuff up top. So let's start with our top screw, and then if we have to adjust on the way down, we can. Okay, there's our first one in. Our next one is still in good shape, so let's go there next. And that's kind of the way we'll put each of these corners together. We'll just work from top to bottom, making sure that we keep our wood lined up. I'm going to take that one off because it's in the way. And I do need to make a little bit of an adjustment there. because it had slid a little bit on me. I'm going to put this clamp underneath that joint so I can see the screw hole a little bit. And then after we get this all screwed together, we're going to give it a preliminary sand to just kind of smooth up our legs a little bit. The joint that we've just screwed together, we're going to smooth that up a little bit. Then we're going to go through and put our maple plugs in all of our holes, and then we'll sand that out. I want to push this forward here a little bit, and I think I'm right where I want to be if I just hold it with my fingers. That's good. And our bottom one is good too. And now you can start to see how our corners are going to come together. So now we have a 2x2 corner, and then we'll do the same thing on our next corner. Just like this. We'll glue and clamp this corner together, and we'll just work our way around till we have our 4 sides together. We now have the basic part of our stool done. All 4 sides are screwed together. We've taken 100 grit sandpaper, 80 grit sandpaper, and we've sanded some of the joints. We're going to continue to sand this edge, and once we get it all sanded 80 grit, we're going to take a 1/4 inch round over bit, and we're going to go around the inside of our profiles and get those all smoothed off. We want to put our plugs in and sand our plugs in, and then we're going to take our 1/4 inch profile down our outside corner. So everything will be nice and smooth. There won't be any rough edges. And so we're going to take it to that point. We're going to go ahead and finish up our sanding and get ready to do our routing. Because sanding is such a process, we won't make you watch that part. Oh, I got hairs. Anyway, we'll go ahead and get this sanded out. It's coming out really well. You can see what a stable stool this would be. I want to tell you something about this stool when we get done, so stick around. We have completed sanding the outside of our legs just to 120 grit. I'm going to go ahead now and put the 1/4 inch round over to the inside, and we're just going to lay it on the side like that, and we're going to take our little Dewalt trim router. And we're going to go ahead and do this to all the openings here and on all 4 sides, and then we'll go ahead and get the buttons ready to put in. We have done the routing on our inside edges, and we completed that. If you'll notice this right here, this is some putty that I made. I took some of my little sawdust from my routing, and I took the finest parts of it. I mixed it with some glue, and I made myself a little putty with my putty knife and glue, and worked that into a few of the cracks that we had. We didn't have many, but we did have a few. And we're now getting ready to put our maple buttons in, maple plugs. Now I bought these tapered plugs, and you want to always get tapered plugs whenever you buy plugs because it makes it easier to put them in. And I bought these from Amazon. You just go in there and get how many you need and what color you need. And then I put a little glue down on a board and take my little plug with my fingers and get glue around the bottom end and around the sides. And then I just take them and squeeze them in the hole there and pound them down. And that's how we'll be putting in all of our plugs. Now, if you have a plug cutter, you can make your own plugs, and they actually have plug cutters that make the tapered plugs that I was just talking about. Why make them when you can buy them? All right, you can see now, let's go ahead and put some on this side. You can begin to start to see the little bit of pattern, the decoration that it's going to be shown down the edge of each leg, down the corner. This putting these little plugs in, getting each one of them glued and in and pounded and everything takes a little bit of time. So I'm going to mostly just show you how it's done, and then we'll come back, clean them up. But you can begin to see how that's going to look so cool. And when that's all sanded off, and we're going to go ahead and put the finish, and we'll talk about the finish when we get there. When we put the finish on here, this is going to darken the wood. the darken the walnut, and these maple plugs will just pop out. It'll be so cool. I just can't wait. This is going to be so much fun. The glue has dried on all our little buttons. We actually tested it on one side to make sure. And so this is what it's going to look like when it's all sanded. We're going to go ahead and complete the sanding, and we're going to route down this edge. Our sanding right now is 120, and we want to be 150. So after we get our routing done, we'll sand all of our routes, and we'll do a final sand 150. And then we're getting close to putting our seat on, and we'll show you that when we get that to the point. Okay, now that we have sanded down our buttons, we're going to route this outside corner. Once we get the route done on the outside corner, we're going to go back and we're going to sand all the routes all the way around everything, get them all smoothed out, and then do a final sand of 150 over everything. We now have everything sanded and ready to go. I made a little block with a 10-degree bevel, just like we have done on everything else. This little block fits in the center of our stool like that, and that is going to be our anchoring cleat for our top. We're going to put that in there, and here's our top. Solid maple, round, bullnose edge on the outside edge, round over, and it's going to sit just like that. And so what we're going to do is we'll tip our stool over. I'm going to put a paper towel down here on my sanding pad just because I don't want to get anything on my nice new top that I just sanded. We're going to put it like that. I've marked it so that we can center our stool. We're going to turn it upside down like that. I'm going to take just a little bit of glue. This will not be nailed in. It will be just pressure fit, because as we screw it to the top, it'll just pull it down good and tight, and the glue will dry and it'll be held in place. And so just a little bit of glue like that. Drop it into place. We'll be anchoring it with 1¼ grabbers through our hanging cleat into our top. There we are. Our legs are centered on our top. We had a little bit of glue that we had in there, and we've cleaned that up so that it's nice and clean. And then, like I say, 1¼ grabbers. We'll just put those through our cleat. Okay, just like that, and it's all together. There's our stool. Now let's put a finish on it. Well, we went ahead and we put our finish on. We used a Watco wax. We've waxed it everywhere. We put it all on all of our surfaces. The nice thing I like about Watco wax, it makes a beautiful finish and it really brings out the color of our wood. But if it ever starts to kind of dry a little bit or get a little faded, you can just put on another application and it just refreshes that finish. We really like it that way, and it is so smooth, so nice. One thing that you need to remember when using Watco wax is you need to make sure that you soak down any rags you use so that it's all wet like that. It has a little of instructions on the back there. You need to make sure you do that so that it's properly disposed of. And that just makes a nice finish to our stool. This stool can be used for bar stool, anything you want to do. I'm going to use mine in my shop for a place to sit. Now that we've got our wax finish on here and disposed of our rags and everything, this is just a beautiful piece of furniture that is nice enough to be in anybody's home. I'm going to use it in my shop for me. It's a great project. I hope you enjoyed it and look forward to seeing you next time on Woodworking with Wes.